In the early years of the Cold War, Western intelligence operations were failing. Top secret missions were compromised before they launched, and undercover agents operating behind the Iron Curtain were disappearing. The destruction was an inside job, directed by 5 highly educated, privileged British citizens who had been recruited to serve Soviet interests. These men, Kim Philby, Guy Burgess, Donald Maclean, Anthony Blunt, and John Cairncross, occupied the most sensitive positions inside MI6, MI5, and the Foreign Office. 5 Soviet agents walked through the front door of British intelligence and sat at the director's table without ever triggering a security alarm. The path to betrayal began at Cambridge University in the 1930s. Against a backdrop of the Great Depression and the rise of fascism, a generation of students found themselves radicalized by communist ideology. Soviet handler Arnold Deutsch targeted the sons of diplomats, aristocrats, and scholars. He saw these elite students as the ultimate long-term assets. Deutsch recognized that traditional revolutionaries would be subjected to intense scrutiny. However, these young men possessed the pedigree and social standing to pass through British security vetting with ease. By recruiting from the upper class, Deutsch secured agents who were inherently protected by the British establishment's own social hierarchies. This chart represents British defense: MI6, MI5, the Foreign Office, and Bletchley Park. Kim Philby led MI6's anti-Soviet section, while Burgess and Maclean infiltrated the Foreign Office. Blunt joined MI5, and Cairncross entered Bletchley, completing a network siphoning intelligence to Moscow. Throughout World War II and the early Cold War, these men provided a constant stream of high-level intelligence, including troop movements and Allied diplomatic strategies. This multi-agency infiltration gave the Soviet Union a comprehensive, real-time view of Western defense plans as they were being written. Their primary protection was the Old Boys Club, an elite network of shared schools and private clubs that functioned as an invisible shield for its members. The group often behaved recklessly. Guy Burgess was flamboyantly indiscreet about his views, and Donald Maclean was known for heavy drinking and public outbursts. Superiors ignored these red flags due to a rigid institutional bias. The prevailing belief was that men of high breeding were culturally incapable of becoming ideological traitors. Their survival relied on cultural camouflage, accents, tailoring, and a shared social history that shielded them from suspicion. The British establishment's own rigid class bias became a critical security vulnerability that the Soviets exploited for decades. In 1951, the mounting evidence of a high-level leak became impossible to ignore, and the cultural shield finally broke. Burgess and Maclean fled to the Soviet Union just as the net was closing, escaping just days before their planned arrests. Their flight triggered a public unraveling. Kim Philby initially survived the suspicion, but eventually defected in 1963, followed by the later exposure of Blunt and Cairncross. The sight of high-ranking diplomats resurfacing in Moscow forced a painful public reckoning that eroded the long-standing belief in institutional infallibility. The geopolitical damage was immense. Operations were compromised, agents were lost, and the shattered relationship with the CIA took years of reform to rebuild. This failure forced an overhaul of Western security protocols. Vetting procedures began to account for ideological conviction and personal character rather than relying on social pedigree. The Cambridge Five remained the definitive study of the insider threat, a reminder that the most significant risks to an institution can originate from the trusted figures sitting at the head of the table.